Well, hello and welcome to this Fotospeed video with me, Tim Jones. Today we are going to be looking at the difference between pigment and dye inks in your printer, and if it makes any difference at all, and what you should be looking at when you're considering what type of ink type you would want in your printer. So I've printed a few prints on some semi-gloss paper, our platinum baryta fine art glossy paper, and also the matte baryta as well, because I want to compare between pigment and dye inks on, say, a shiny kind of glossy semi-gloss type of paper like the platinum baryta, and also a cotton-based matte paper, which is the matte baryta I've picked today. But before I get into any of that and looking at these prints on the table, as always, I'm afraid to say we got a little bit of housekeeping to do. So please don't forget to subscribe to the Fotospeed YouTube channel. Just click the subscribe button below. Also, don't forget to sign up to the Fotospeed newsletter on photospeed.com. I will put links in the description to all of these links that I'm going to be talking about. And also, don't forget to download the Fotospeed Art of Printing, the free ebook from us here at Fotospeed, describing everything to do with printing, including the difference between pigment and dye inks, but mainly everything to covers color management, to framing, bookmaking, absolutely everything in between. Also, for any US viewers out there, do not forget you can now order Fotospeed paper directly from inside the USA from Midwest Photo. I will put links to all of that in the description below. And you can head over to Midwest Photo to buy your paper if you are based in the USA. Okay, so that's the housekeeping out of the way. So let's have a look at some prints and let me talk you through the difference between pigment and dye inks and actually what it physically means when you actually print the print on the page. Okay, so the big difference between pigment and dye, I like to say that pigment has been seen as kind of the gold standard of printing. Within the fine art world we're talking about now, the inkjet, giclée kind of fine art world. And it's been that because pigment inks are classified as fine art, especially here in the UK by the Fine Art Trade Guild, and are fully archival, and now I believe Canon are quoting over 200 years for their pigment inks, and Epson aren't far behind on that at all. So that is why I think there's been a bit more investment put into these printers. So they're generally printers with 10 or 12 inks in, amazing color gamuts, etc. The other thing is you can get perfect black and whites out of the box with them. You click the black and white mode and they produce perfect black and whites. Dye inks, on the other side of the coin, are usually associated with the cheaper end of the market, the cheaper printers or the more budget printers, should we say. So they only have like 4 to 6 inks. Canon do the Pro 200, which has 8 inks in. But they generally haven't got a wider color gamut and are seen as almost a lesser kind of ink because they're not classified as archival to start with. A few years ago, I would say, you put a dye print in the window and it would just start to fade over time. That sunlight, that UV would start attacking the dye ink and it would just fade over time. So you'd put this lovely print up and then you come back to it and it would just look horrible and pale and not very punchy. A good thing I would say about dye inks, which hopefully we're going to see in a minute, is when they come out of the printer, they do look incredibly punchy and they leap off the page at you, especially with color. But I'll show you that in a second. Now, I said it used to be like that. Now, dye ink seems to be on a little bit of a resurgence, shall we say, and there seems to be a bit more investment being put into dye inks now. Both Epson and Canon are quoted 100-year life on dye-based prints. Now, I ran some tests on dye versus pigment to see which would fade first, if at all. I'll put the video at the end so you can go and have a watch of it. And basically, I didn't really find much difference after 6 months or a year in direct sunlight, stuck in the window. I didn't really find much difference at all. So dye inks, they do have a bit more of a shelf life now, it seems to. I mean, if I put, say 10 years ago, and I put a dye print in the window and I just exposed it to sunlight for that time over a year, it would definitely have faded. But now, not so much, especially with Epson's EcoTank printers and also the Canon Pro 200 as well. The print quality is absolutely amazing from a dye-based printer now, I have to say. And the reasoning between dye and pigment is actually getting a little bit closer, shall we say, and a lot of the arguments are slipping away, fading away, I think is a good way of putting it. But let's look at some prints to illustrate this. Now I'm going to start with this car image, which is right in the middle here of my array of prints I've got on the table. Now I should say this is printed on the Platinum Baryta. Now I printed the dye-based printer on the Canon Pro 200, which is the 8-ink dye-based printer from Canon. And to keep things fair, I kept it within the same manufacturer. So I printed the pigment-based print on the Canon Pro 300. And that's the 10-ink pigment-based printer from Canon, just to keep it nice and fair. So they're within the same, they're working within the same kind of colors and things like that. Both with custom profiles, so no funny business going on at all. Now, hopefully from the shots, I'm going to put some close-ups as well, you can see instantly that the Pro 200, which is on the right-hand side, is a lot punchier, almost has a little bit more contrast to it. And I have to say, I prefer the dye print, to be honest. It's a lot punchier on the Baryta, and it just kind of pops off the page at me and really makes those colors kind of stand out, especially kind of in the stars at the top here and things. And I think you almost get a little bit more, possibly definition, just around the tires and things. Not too sure why. I would have thought it would be the other way around. However, it does kind of stand out, especially the reds and things. They do just pop off the page at me a little bit. Now the same is true, say, for a bit more of a muted picture, like this Kingfisher picture here. Now I'm not too sure which one I prefer, but the dye-based print here is the same thing as the car. It just jumps off the page. The colors are a little bit richer. They're a little bit denser, even a little bit more contrast in there. Now, which is truer kind of color-wise? Possibly the pigment. The pigment, though, is a lot more muted. Again, custom profiles, same custom profiles as the car picture and things on the 200 and 300. Now, the contrast is definitely down to the dye inks in this. So it really has popped off the page and really does kind of, like I said, the pigment prints, they almost look flat, like you've printed on the wrong side of the paper or something. There's a definite difference between these two, which is quite shocking. Now, the last one on the Baryta, I did a black and white. And I put these two side by side, and I said to myself, okay, well, actually, I really like the black on this one here, which is actually the Pro 200. It is given a really nice deep black that kind of pops off the page at you, a little bit more contrast, it's held detail lovely. And then with the 300 next to it, it almost looked a little bit sepia. And I was thinking, well, why is this? Because on these prints, I use the black and white modes of the printers. So when I looked at the 300 on its own, it looks perfectly neutral, looks great. I took it to the window, had a look under the lights in here that are kind of daylight balanced for me, and it looked absolutely perfect. Then I looked at the 200 on its own, and it looks pretty good. And it looks absolutely perfect as well, with a little bit of this silkier kind of black in there as well, with the dye ink, so a little bit denser black. However, when I put them side by side, I think there's a tiny, now in the Pro 200 with the dye ink, and this is an issue with dye inks, they haven't quite got round yet. I think on this particular image, in this picture, there is a slight, tiniest amount of magenta in it, possibly. So I think with a good custom profile, I could neutralize that out and get a beautiful print. But to be honest, they both have their own quality. If they're side by side, they look different. One looks a little bit warmer and one looks a little bit cooler. In isolation, I think, personally, my eyes, I think they look quite neutral. It's only when you put them side by side and they look different. and they're looking a little bit silkier. And I'm kind of guessing a little bit that this one might have magenta in, but this one might have a little bit of yellow. Yeah, I'm going to have to explore that a little bit more, I think. But I do really like the black on this, on the Pro 200. Looks really nice. Again, the pigment, the black in here just looks a little bit flat. It almost looks like a matte black or a matte print when compared to the dye. So with color images and black and white images onto semi-gloss, like a fine art glossy paper like the Platinum Baryta, the dye prints really do, I think, in my opinion, they kind of pop off the page a little bit more. They create a little bit more contrast. And they look great. I mean, they look absolutely fantastic, I have to say. And personally, for me, I do prefer that look a little bit more intense, a little bit more pop in there. However, for matte prints, it is completely reversed. Because effectively, most dye printers, or majority of dye printers, only have one matte black. And that's the same with the Pro 200, because although it's got 8 inks there, it's got an extra grey, but it's only got one black in there, which is normally a photo black. So when you're printing on matte prints, you are using the photo black. So you can see here the difference that it's got. On the Pro 300, you've got this beautiful deep black in here, this matte black. And then you've kind of got this pale kind of wishy-washy black that's what the 200 and the dye ink has produced, because the dye ink is soaking into the paper so much more than that pigment matte black. And again, it's the same with a color image as well. They look slightly different. I would say there's definitely a bit more punch with the 200 image here. The color has completely gone. It's just really flattened out completely. On the 300, we've got that beautiful blue and that yellow in here. And although we've still got loads of detail and things, it's not a bad print. We've just lost that punch and that vibrancy that we saw on screen, just because it's soaked into the paper a lot more. And it's just flattened everything for us, to be honest. So hopefully that's kind of shown you practically, physically, the differences between a pigment and a dye ink, between a matte paper and kind of a semi-gloss paper. These results, I've used fine art papers here, but these results would still be the same for, say, a photo range paper like the Lusters and Glossies and Pearls and Matte Ultras, etc. You'd still see exactly the same results as we've seen here. Dye ink's giving a little bit more punch on those semi-gloss kind of shiny type of papers, and the pigment ink's really winning out on the matte papers as well. There's also the archivability that you've got to take into consideration. Maybe that's a little bit more psychological, but also the running costs as well of pigment versus dye inks. If you go for, say, an eco tank machine from Epson, the running costs are incredibly cheap with those refillable bottles and things. So, like I said, I hope that's been useful and hopefully helps you to decide between a pigment and a dye-based printer. There's a lot more to it, but hopefully that shows you physically, print-wise, the differences between the two. So, on that note, please don't forget to subscribe to the Fotospeed YouTube channel. Also sign up to the Fotospeed newsletter on photospeed.com. Don't forget to download the free ebook from us here at Fotospeed called The Art of Printing. Covers everything from dye and pigment inks right through to framing, bookmaking, absolutely everything, including color management along the way. I'll put all the links in the description below for you. Also, don't forget, if you live inside the USA, please now order your papers through a Midwest Photo. I will put their website below, and that is our new reseller directly within the USA through Midwest Photo. So I'll put their website in the description as well. So if you fancy trying any of our lovely papers, like the Platinum Baryta and the Matte Baryta that I've used today, please just follow the link below if you live in the USA, or visit photospeed.com. Okay, we release new videos here every week. So on that note, I will see you next week. Bye-bye.